there was more news today. Tennessee landing a transfer commitment from Igor Milicic Jr. from Charlotte. Grant, thanks for the time. Tennessee's landed a couple of big guys since I think we last talked to you here on this show. We'll work our way backwards. What is Tennessee getting in Igor Milicic Jr., 6'10", roughly, transfer forward from Charlotte?
Great size, 6'10", 225, kind of a stretch four. He's a guy that shot 48.7% from the field, I believe, at Charlotte last season, shot 36.7% from the three-point line, and he shot a lot of threes. That wasn't on a limited sample size. I think he attempted 100 and something threes, maybe like 150, something like that. So he's a guy that's going to shoot the basketball, but he does give you that size. It always felt like when they were going after Igor and Cade Tyson, the Belmont wing, who committed to North Carolina on Sunday, I think Tennessee always felt like they were going to get one of those guys. And if you did, that was going to be great. And I don't think there's any complaints with Igor. I think he's his dad is a really, really successful basketball coach overseas. So you're getting a guy that grew up as a coach's kid. I think he's a culture fit with Rick Barnes in terms of, he doesn't want a lot of publicity, doesn't want to talk a lot. He just wants to go and put in work and play ball and do what he does. So at 6'10", 225, to have the numbers that he had, to average 12 and 8 last year like he did, it's a big get for Tennessee for sure.
What do you think sold Igor on Tennessee?
Rick, and probably this culture and the opportunity at Tennessee. I mean, this roster is wide open. You've got some good pieces around you. You've obviously seen what Rick has done the last, he's been successful his entire career at Tennessee, basically, after those first couple of years. But these last 3 years in particular, going to a couple Sweet 16s in a row and Elite Eight this year, winning 75-plus games over the last 3 seasons. I mean, they're going to win basketball games, and there's going to be opportunity to play because of how wide open the roster is. And I think Rick is somebody that it's easy to sell Rick Barnes on a coach's kid because that the way they grew up playing the game and growing up as a coach's kid, I think that kind of parent wants their kid playing for somebody like Rick Barnes, who's you're going to be held accountable, you're going to play defense, you're going to play on both ends of the floor, and he's not going to accept anything else. So I think it was kind of a little bit of a perfect storm and a really good fit for both parties.
We're talking to Grant Ramey from Volquest. What about the fit with Felix Okpara, who has the ties to Chattanooga before he went to Ohio State? He blocked close to 2.5 shots per game. What's his fit, do you think, with Tennessee coming in to help in the front court?
Yeah, you had to restock that front court with Jonas Aidoo in the portal and Tobe Awaka now off to Arizona. And, obviously the offensive numbers are going to be better for Jonas Aidoo and the breakout kind of junior season that he had. But you look at Felix at 6'11", the rim protector, blocking 2.5 shots a game, like you mentioned. That's huge for Tennessee. He's not going to be as the numbers are similar with him and Tobe. Tobe's a better offensive rebounder. Obviously, Felix is 6'11", Tobe's 6'8", so that's a big difference. The fouls per 40 minutes are a big difference, too. I think Felix is at 4.9. I think Tobe's at 7.6. So it's a little bit of the best of both worlds. I think he's probably a little bit more physical in terms of making fix-it plays behind the defense than maybe Jonas was. So they had to do something big there with the bigs to get some size down there low. And I think Felix Okpara was a guy that made sense because, those Chattanooga connections exist. Like you talked about, and Tennessee went really hard after him a couple of years ago when he was a 4-star prospect in the 2022 class. So when it came to him entering the portal, it felt like Tennessee was one of the obvious choices from the jump, and Tennessee worked quickly to get him.
Tobe goes to Arizona. What do you hear? What do you think about where Jonas Aidoo is going to go?
Well, he's at Arkansas over the weekend. So obviously John Calipari's got, a ton of roster spots open. He basically started from scratch. I don't know if he had a single scholarship guy when he got to Arkansas by the time all that roster turnover happened. So there's huge opportunity there. And obviously there's no SEC. You can go SEC to SEC school in basketball and like football. Baylor also hosted him on a visit, I think, 2 weeks ago. I think North Carolina was involved early on. Obviously, North Carolina, he's a Durham kid, so that would be his home state school. That would be a big deal. I'm not sure where he's leaning, but based on, North Carolina, Baylor, and Arkansas being involved, John Calipari being involved, I think that tells you what kind of upside he has and just how good he can be. It's just a matter of if he can establish himself consistently, learn to play a little bit more physical. I mean, he can be an all-SEC, all-ACC, all Big 12, whatever it is, wherever he ends up. He can be a first-team kind of guy if he can kind of build on what he did at Tennessee.
Grant Ramey, Volquest. So, Grant, at this point, Tennessee has landed Darlin Stone-Dubar from Hofstra. Felix Okpara from Ohio State, Igor Milicic Jr. from Charlotte. Kind of an all-name transfer class, you could argue. What's next? Who is next on the radar that you're paying attention to with Tennessee pursuing other players?
It is the Chaz Lanier sweepstakes from now until whenever Chaz Lanier decides what he's going to do. He's the North Florida guard. He's from Nashville. He entered the portal late last week. The portal deadline is in a couple days, so you're going to see a lot of names jumping in the portal before that thing closes. He averaged 21, I think, a game at North Florida last year. He's one of the most efficient scorers, one of the best shooters in the country. And you knew he had announced in March that he was going to go through the NBA draft process. And in that announcement, he thanked the North Florida staff and the players and the fans and all that stuff. It felt like he wasn't going back to North Florida, but he hadn't entered the portal yet. So everybody's waiting on him to enter the portal. And then when he did that, it kind of became the Chaz Lanier sweepstakes. Now, the interesting kind of development there is he went in with a do not contact tag, which means he doesn't want to hear from coaches. And I think people see that and they think he knows where he's going. I think it also could be a situation where the player goes in and he just wants to contact the schools that he has interest in. I think Tennessee's an obvious suitor for him. Should be, one of the major players for him because he is from Nashville. He went to Innsworth. I think Tennessee's all in on trying to get him, and they're going to be all in. I think it's just going to have to be a thing where you're going to have some patience and let him go through the NBA draft process. And he's still going to go through with that, and he's going to see what feedback he gets, and I guess he's going to go from there. But all eyes will be on him. Tennessee has 3 open roster spots right now. If you could get Chaz Lanier, that elevates your team in a big, big way. I mean, if you just look at his numbers and how efficient and how much he scored it last year. And Tennessee could sell him on the Dalton Connect role of come in, shoot it as many times as you need to shoot the ball, score it as much as you need to score it like Dalton did, and raise your draft, your profile, your stock, all that stuff over the next year like Dalton did at Tennessee. Because Dalton went from off the radar to a lottery pick, it seems like, this summer. I think you could see Chaz Lanier do the same thing based on where he goes if he does go back to college for another year. And then you would still have 2 open spots. I think that would be 2 more like developmental guys, younger guys, or maybe just pick up one and leave an open roster spot because we've seen them in the past add guys like Tobe Awaka as Chaz Lanier really late in the summer, late in the process, and leave yourself some wiggle room there.
If Tennessee goes out and get Chaz Lanier, how close do you think, just from a top-to-bottom talent standpoint, would this roster be versus last year's roster?
I think it'd be very similar. I think it could have a chance to be better offensively because of, and it sounds crazy saying that, because you're losing Dalton Connect, who is a generational talent and a generational scorer, and we're not going to see that again for a very, very long time because those guys don't come around very often. But I think when you're adding Darlington Dubar and when you're adding Igor Milicic and you look at their percentages and the way they scored it last season, if you could add a Chaz Lanier to that, I think based on the collection of guys, you're trying to replace that 20-some whatever points a game that you got from Dalton. You're trying to replace, obviously Santi didn't have the 5th year that he wanted. Josiah was a little bit up and down, but he scored it pretty good as well. I think they could be better offensively. I think they'd be a top 10 team again from the jump. I think they'd be a little bit worse defensively, maybe take a step back there. But they would be a really, really good basketball team, a lot of good scores. It would just be about, how consistently they could do that, how it compares to last season, and how good they can get on the defensive end, and if they can play that Rick Barnes style of defense that we've seen the last few years.
Yeah, talking about the number of shooters that Tennessee can have, especially if Chaz comes on board and joins Tennessee as well. But Swain and I were talking about big men under Rick Barnes. Igor would be the first proven shooter among big men, wouldn't he be? We've talked about guys that could shoot. Grant Williams became a shooter in the NBA, but that was not his role at Tennessee. Wouldn't this be the first time a big guy has proven he can shoot from the outside, and Igor Milicic?
Yeah, and I can't remember who tweeted this. I just saw it before I came on here with you guys. Somebody tweeted, and I'm sorry I can't cite them, but he would be the first 6'9" guy or taller at Tennessee to shoot 100-plus threes since Wayne Chisholm. And that was, quite a while ago. So for him, if he comes in and he shot it 149 times, I think, from 3 last year at Charlotte, maybe 122 times 2 years ago. So these guys going to come in and you would think shoot 100 threes, no problem. And no, that hasn't existed under Rick Barnes. That would be definitely a different development for him. It'd be interesting to see how much he does that and how well he shoots it. And obviously, I think you don't bring him in here to tell him not to shoot it. The way he's shot it the last couple of years, so that would be definitely a different look for a Rick Barnes offense. But it's obviously something Tennessee needs really bad.
Yeah, we were talking about Big Weezy a little bit earlier in the show as well. So it is a new look that Tennessee could have in the front court with Igor's skill set for Rick Barnes' offense heading into next season. Volquest.com is where you can read Grant's work, Rob Lewis covering what's going on with hoops, and then, of course, everything from football to baseball, Little Lady Vols basketball with all that's happening with Kim Caldwell as well. Volquest.com. Grant, we appreciate you making time to join us in the 10 to 12 minutes. I'm sure something's happened transfer portal related, so we'll let you get back to it, and thanks again for hopping on with us today.
I'm afraid to pick up my phone, but I appreciate y'all having me.